This is your place for all things Detroit Red Wings and all things Chicago Blackhawks. With your hosts, Jordan Linscott, David Barnhouse, Nick LePage, and Tim Stompanato. This is the Stick Blade Podcast. All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of the Stick Blade Podcast. This week we have a very special show for all of you guys. We have Scott Powers of the Athletic Chicago on the show. For anybody who's not really familiar with the Athletic, basically it's a subscription-based news outlet for sports. You can get podcasts on all of the major sports like football, basketball, soccer, hockey. Whatever your sport is, it's on there, and you can get all sorts of fixes about it. Scott writes for the Athletic Chicago. He's also worked for ESPN, covering the Blackhawks and the White Sox. He's worked for the Daily Herald, the Chicago Sun-Times. And then you can also catch his own podcast, Laz and Powers, as well on the Athletic. Scott, thank you for coming to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, no, this is great. Thank you.
So we're going to go ahead and just sort of jump into the show this week. Scott, you write for the Athletic Chicago, and as it seems to be, Chicago has a huge passion for the hockey recently. Just the resurgence of the Blackhawks from 2010 to 2015 really brought the fan base, I think, back in droves. And this season, we kind of saw them start to come back from the bottom and maybe potentially start pushing for playoffs. And even though they're mid-rebuild, what were your takeaways this season, just from like in terms of what were their growth signs and what were areas that they need to start looking to address in the future if they're looking to get back to the summit again?
Yeah, it's interesting because this year, you coming into the year, you thought they'd be one of the worst teams in the NHL. I think the Blackhawks were bracing themselves for a really tough season, considering, Jonathan Toews was out, and then Kirby Dach was out, and they walked away from Corey Crawford, and they're leaving the net to a number of unproven goalies, and you certainly have the defensive issues of the past few years, and you add it all up, and you thought it would equate to a team that's probably a lottery pick, maybe get a chance to really land a superstar in the draft, and they come out and they're better than everyone expected. The fact that Kevin Lankinen had a pretty good season, he really kept them in, and the power play has been really good. And some of their analytics aren't great still, but they exceeded expectations. They had a bunch of rookies who stepped in and played good roles and contributed, and guys like Brandon Hagel and Pia Suter and Philip Kurashev, and down the line. I think they've had 8 or 9 rookies play their first game this season, and a number of them score their first goal. And the fact that Patrick Kane's played at a pretty elite level, and DeBrincat's bounced back. They had a lot of things that went right, and they were able to stay competitive and get those young guys a lot of great experience. And obviously they've fallen off, and the last month or so it hasn't been the same. But this was I guess on the one side is the positives are these young players are probably ahead of schedule, and they have high expectations. On the other side, it's one of the quickest ways to rebuild is getting superstars and landing. If they can go out, especially defensively, there's a lot of top defensemen in this draft, and a guy like Owen Power, and I think there are 4 defensemen expected to go in the first 6 or 7 picks. If they'd had someone like that, then maybe the rebuild is a little bit quicker. So it's like they're stuck in between again. They certainly have a lot of young defensemen they like. And the fact that the goalie, I think Lincoln is the guy, which was, I think, the biggest question entering the season is, you go from Corey Crawford to Robin Leonard to, Kevin Lincoln, Colin Dilly, and Malcolm Subban. You really don't know what you're going to get. So the fact that they think they have something in Lincoln, and I think that crosses something off of, off the checklist. They certainly have areas they need to improve defensively, especially. There's some issues there, and they're still among the worst teams in shots against, and scoring chances and a lot of the different metrics. But considering what everyone thought they were going to be this season, the fact that they did play meaningful games this late in the year, I think even from within it's been surprising.
You mentioned quite a few of the young guys or rookies. I know not all are considered rookies right now, but what was your biggest surprise? I know we had like a guy like Hagel who really turned into a beloved athlete in Chicago right now, and Kevin Lincoln kind of coming out of nowhere where he was the 3rd goalie coming in. Pia Suter, obviously. Well, who was your biggest rookie or young player that kind of stood out to you this season?
Yeah, I think Lincoln and Hagel are the main ones. Lincoln, and considering that he was, behind Delia and Subban in the depth chart coming and hadn't played a single NHL game, and to be as good as he was for a long stretch there, it just, I think that was, they had high hopes considering, what he did in Finland, and then, what he did in the World Championships. But you never know,
Yeah.
I mean, even last year he got called up a couple of times and just sat the bench and never got into a game. And then Brandon Hagel, I mean, he just, he's finally starting to score, but even if he doesn't score, he's impactful every game. And, if you look at who they're going to protect and, in the expansion draft, and I think they're going to probably go 7-3, but, if they re-sign Nikita Zadorov, there's a chance they go 4-4 from right here. And Hagel, I think, is the fourth forward that you protect. And I don't think we were probably saying that a year ago. So I think Hagel's, he's inserted himself as, a top 9 forward. If he can figure out and put some more goals in, he's had a lot of chances, but hasn't scored a ton. So, if he becomes a player that, he's been at other levels, even last year he led Rockford in scoring, if he can become a 20 plus goal scorer, I mean, that's another weapon they have. So I think Lincoln Lincoln and Hagel, and then even like Khrushchev. I mean, I think Khrushchev's a little bit ahead of the curve. I wrote a big story about him that's coming out tomorrow, and he had a really unique upbringing, and he's the third youngest guy on this team this year. He was behind Doc and Boqvist, so I know that he's had some inconsistencies too. But considering how young he is, and being a 4th round pick and being ahead of the curve probably on when they thought he was going to be in NHL, like I think the Blackhawks have to be hopeful about him too. So, even defensively too. I mean, I know Mitchell and Bodan and all those guys have been in and out of the lineup, but it's the fact they've been getting those games, I think that's all priceless. And Blackhawks said before this season that they were going to play the young guys, and I know that people still complain they don't play them enough, but it's the fact that they've gotten in so many rookies and so many guys that got these many games. And when you do look around the league, there's not a lot of teams that are doing this. So I think the Blackhawks stuck to it. I mean, I think a year from now we begin to judge them differently, and these players need to succeed. And like if they're going to catch any sort of window with Kane and Taves and Keith still around, like they need to all take some massive steps. But I think for this season, I mean, they have to like what they saw in a lot of these young guys.
Okay. Now, obviously, the Hawks are in the midst of a rebuild. Management has said, hey, we're rebuilding. It seems like in the NHL, you've got two, I would say, general ideas of rebuilds. You've got the teams who tear it all down. They say, we're selling everybody. We're going to start from scratch, kind of in the way that Edmonton and Buffalo kind of did. And then you've got other teams that when they come out of their, I would say, cup contending window, they say, we've got a couple guys who are 15, 20 goal scorers, and we'd love to keep them around. But if we're going to be rebuilding for the future and not have to bottom out again, we got to trade those guys for 2nd or 3rd rounders who might potentially pan out as depth guys. Which route do you think that Chicago will be taking, just given the fact that that older core is now starting to age a little bit?
Yeah, I feel like they're amidst of something here. I'm not exactly what it is. I mean, they traded Saad, so like there's some of that, like they definitely traded some of their pieces. Some of it feels like some of the decisions have been made for them. I mean, the fact that Shaw retired, and Seabrook retired, and these are all guys that they had him signed. I mean, Seabrook was signed for 4 more years. Like they certainly anticipated him being a piece of this. I mean, Hosa's contract was this is last year, his contract too. So like he was supposed to be expected to be in the Blackhawks too. And if all those guys are on this team, and it's it's hard to say where they would be. Like obviously Hosa at 40, whatever he is, or Seabrook in 4 years from now. So I mean, the challenge now is dealing with some of those contracts. I mean, even next year, this year you saw so many of these guys in LTIR, and they really didn't, capitalize on the cap space because there really wasn't like a need to win. But a year from now, like if they're competitive, and Seabrook and Shaw are in LTIR, and the way that you usually capitalize on that is you go get someone at the deadline and you add someone because you have that cap space. And it'll be questionable, like if they're competitive next year and they're actually a decent team, like do you go and do that, or do you sit back and realize that this is probably also why we got into this problem, is because we traded 1st round picks and we traded prospects. So it'll be interesting, because I'm sure they want to win again during the while Kane and Taves and Keith are under contract, and that window's closing. So, within the next 2 years, they need to stay competitive. And then they have some, as much as, like they're benefiting right now from, having Kevin Lincoln on an entry level deal and Doc and Boqvist, like all these guys are going to have to get paid again, and eventually the cap will become, hell like them. It is every other NHL team, especially with the flat cap. So
Right.
right now they've benefited because they have on all these guys in ELC. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know exactly what, like, if the Blackhawks, like, it feels like they've been in a rebuild for a while because, they haven't been in the playoffs. I mean, we can count last year if you want or not, but, they haven't won a true playoff series since 2015. I mean, they losing to St. Louis and then Nashville in the first round. And then and then trying to continue to win, that they never really went through those stages they probably should have, and tried to sell off pieces and try to get, high lottery picks. And obviously they fell into some luck with getting Kirby Dach at number 3. I mean, they weren't expected to pick that high. So it feels like the rebuild's been a mixed bag, and some of that maybe was John McDonough as president. And it feels like, Stan Bowman maybe has a little bit more control now as he's the president of hockey operations, and Danny Wirtz has given him more of a say. So maybe there's a clearer message or direction, but yeah, I don't know. It's been all over the place. So I don't know if they've, you obviously had 2, distinct ways that teams do this, and it doesn't feel like the Blackhawks are really doing it either one of those ways.
Okay. Speaking of young guys, though, that the Hawks have playing, obviously we've seen a lot of players from them this season that we probably didn't expect seeing. I mean, Jonathan Taves was out the whole season. Kirby Dach was out the majority of the season. So they got to really see a lot of the younger players in their system and what they have to offer. Did you have anybody in particular who you thought were like the real standouts this season who really stepped up when Chicago needed it to happen for them?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we talked about Hagel and Lincoln, and Pia Suter was, a guy that, they signed him from Switzerland. He had put up, led the Swiss league, the National League in points and in goals, and Kubalik had come from that same league, so you had an idea that maybe it's transferable. But Suter is a different type of player. He does a lot of his production around the net, and he's yeah, I don't know. He's very opportunistic, and he gets a lot of his points that way. So you weren't sure if that's going to transfer over with Kubalik. You knew he had this big shot, and he can probably score at this level. So for Suter to have some success, and he got a big chance to center DeBrincat and Kane there for a while. So that certainly he benefited from that. But he took advantage of his opportunities too. Got on the top power play unit. So it felt like at different stages, different rookies had stepped up, and Ian Mitchell had played 20, 30 games straight, and he was playing some major minutes early on when they were doing well. And I think lately Wyatt Kelenic, a free agent they signed out of Wisconsin, who I think is one of the better offensive defensemen. He has just a poise with the puck and a scoring ability, and he can read plays, and I think there's something there that could be long-standing for them. So I think there are a number of guys that have stepped in, and even now, like they've given Mike Hardman, who they signed out of Boston College as a college free agent, and the fact that he was burnt, he burns his deal, so he's got a he burns the first year of his contract, so he's in the NHL. So he's gotten into some games here now too. So the fact that these guys all got this experience, I don't know if they're all NHL players or if they're all Blackhawks going forward, but I think they're getting a taste of everyone and allowing those players to get an opportunity to play in the NHL. And I think from a year from now, and something I wrote about for today was just even within the forward group. I mean, there were 20 forwards I counted that could be in the mix for the NHL next year, and the Blackhawks are going to have a pretty big offseason kind of deciding who steps to the forefront. But I think they're building competition. Like they have a lot of young players they wanted to choose from, and some have had some NHL success this year. Some have had kind of ups and downs, but I think that's what the whole plan of this year was too, is to allow them to get their feet wet, and even during those struggles to kind of go through it at least at the NHL level instead of Rockford.
Yeah, you mentioned Wyatt Kalynuk. I think for me, and I know we've talked about this on the podcast before, the second half of the season, he's really been a standout to me. I know we've talked about him just with his poise with the puck. We've seen with a lot of the other young defensemen, especially our offensive puck movers, sometimes there's a hesitancy to take that risky play or evaluating that risk reward in that split second situation, which can make some guys a little gun shy, can make some guys a little sloppy at times. we haven't seen that as much with Cal, at least from the eye test that I, as a casual fan, see. He seems to have where Mitchell and Bodan and Boqvist have all been very hyped up for us reasonably. So I am a big fan. He seemed to leapfrog on the depth chart a little bit. Someone, that sort of came out of left field. I know there's been a lot said about we have an absence of anyone that could be really groomed to be a number one defenseman. Realistically, what can we expect from Kalnick, just from what we've seen and what you've seen?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the one part of this is Kelnick's 24 years old. Like it makes a huge difference. And just having, he is obviously new to this and, new to pro hockey. But for him being that age difference, and I was even thinking about this last night's game where Gustav Forsling's become a pretty good defenseman, and this is a guy who probably was propped to the NHL too soon. Like I remember, he was going to go back to Sweden for another year when the Blackhawks were deciding whether to sign him or what to do. And the Blackhawks kept him, and Quenneville liked him a lot. And then, he was up and down and struggled. And even last year he was in at Carolina. I don't think he got a single NHL game. And now here he is, he's playing, he's playing a top 4 role for Florida. He looked really good. I mean, he was great last night. He does something a lot of the Blackhawks defensemen struggle at, just breaking the puck out and even moving it himself. And he set up a goal last night just by getting involved in the play. And I think Kelnick has a lot of those elements, and I think the age and experience, he's just a little bit more poised, a little bit more aggressive. He makes different reads. I think Boqvist is really capable of that, and I know people are down on Boqvist just because, he hasn't, it hasn't clicked for him yet, but he's, outside of, Kel McCarr, I think he might be the youngest everyday defenseman in the NHL. And so I think there's still more in him. The fact that Boqvist has come around, defensively, I think there's some upside. I think the biggest thing, and Colleton talked about a lot too, is about just that he needs to get his stamina up. Like there's an issue there where they don't think he can play consistently enough and give them enough shifts where he plays a shift and goes back on the power play. So I think that's something they want him to focus on. I don't know if Kelnick's a top defenseman. I think he might be a better version of Eric Gustafsson, like it's
okay.
I seen some of in the way that Kelnick's connected with Kane on passes, the way that he's read Kane. I think there was one play that he set up Kane and it, it felt like Gustafsson. There was another play where he made a read and, Jack Han, mentioned it to me, just how that it was such an elite read and he thought Kane had, basically directed him there. And that's possible. I mean, Cade kind of directs players there, but the Kelnick was able to identify that and get to the net and score a really good goal against, I think it was Nashville. If you can find someone that's a little bit more defensively responsible than Gustafsson and, can maybe play some sheltered minutes. And, I last night I thought we saw Kelnick get, exposed a little bit. I think defensively, one-on-one and stuff, there's some areas that he can grow on. But again, these are all, this is a guy who had to wait his turn this year. And, it was certainly below, behind the depth chart, behind Bodan and Mitchell and Boqvist. All the guys are kind of hyped up in the prize prospect pieces, but Kelnick has really risen, probably risen in the top, above a lot of those guys. So it'll be interesting to see him going forward. But I think he's someone that, even now having that second power play unit, if the 2 power play units are Boqvist and Kelnick, I mean, those are 2 players that you can grow into them for many years. So that Gustafsson comparison feels it's been popping out to me more here as I watch the games. And if he can be, I mean, Gustafsson, he really was with Kane. Like Kane, no one's really connected with Kane the way that Gustafsson did. Like Boqvist hasn't figured it out. Daryl Belfry, who works with Kane, and he and I wrote a book together. We're talking about it, how there hasn't been someone that has really figured out how to play with Kane. Because when you do, like, he makes you better, like he makes you look better, and he learns. If you learn how to play with him and read it off him, he'll set you up, and he'll make it easier for you. And I think Gustafsson was really good at that. I mean, Gustafsson had 60 plus points in a season. It's astonishing what he did, and he hasn't been the same player since. But I think being able to play with Kane is such a benefit for the team, and for the player and Kane. So I think the more that Kelnick can do that, and I'm sort of surprised. Maybe we'll see it here in the last week here, but maybe putting Kelnick on that top power play unit. And I mean, I don't see really, now the fact that they're out of the race so much that really Duncan Keith needs to be on that top unit. Maybe you give Kelnick that ride and see if he can connect with Kane a little bit more and he can create something there. Because I'm not sure Duncan Keith's probably the solution going forward on the top unit.
Yeah, Patrick Kane's a pretty special person to have pretty good chemistry with for Kelnick.
Pretty much anybody, really.
Yeah, I guess so. But we've heard Stan Bowman mention before the offseason that really the target, and they have all these young guys in the 19 to 22 range. And then, he's looking for these players in the 24 to 26-year-old range where they, kind of veteran, kind of have some experience going on in the NHL. I mean, then in comes Vinny Hinostroza, kind of a trade that not surprised us all, but, kind of got a lot more backlash than really I thought should have, because we traded Brad Morrison. But 27 years old, we've loved what we've seen of him since he's joined the Blackhawks, with 0 points in 9 games with Florida. And now he has, he has 11 points to join the Hawks. But yeah, I mean, so I know you mentioned 20 forwards fighting for a roster spot next year. Do we see a spot where Vinny's going to, continue with the Blackhawks?
Yeah, I think it's a possibility. I mean, it's the part of it is the numbers game. Like if there weren't as many forwards in the mix, like Hinostroza, if he was willing to sign for $1 million or whatever, I think it's a no brainer. Maybe even for a year or two contract. Like I think players like him are in a really tough spot with a flat cap because the stars are going to get taken care of, and the guys coming on their second, coming off their ELCs, the elite players are going to get taken care of. And I think a lot of players like Hinostroza, they're going to face some of the realities of, of a flat cap. And I think Drake Kajulin, Slater Cuckoo, guys like that last year where, they felt like they could walk away from the Blackhawks deals because they were going to get paid elsewhere. And then, they go elsewhere and there's no one offering money because everyone's in the same boat. So I think Hinostroza, considering that, he had options last year coming out of Arizona and decided to go to Florida because he thought it was going to be a good situation. And you're going to a coach who played you before and, a lot of players, and then it just backfired. Like it was hell for him. So I think the fact that he's gone through that, he's been back to the Blackhawks, like the, Colleton system fits him. He's obviously comfortable here. It's where he grew up. And I think there are a lot of different elements that factor into that. So, for the Blackhawks, if it's low risk and, if it doesn't work out and either you assign him or trade him or something, but if financially, if it makes sense, I think they're willing to consider it because he has played so well. I mean, it's unmistakable that he's been a really good player here, and he's put up points and analytics have been pretty good. And he's in an age where, he's getting a little bit on the older side, and you probably don't want to give him a long-term deal. But if it's a year or two and it's low risk, then what do you have to lose? Because he's certainly he's kept them competitive in a lot of these games, and he's obviously driven. And it just feels like it's something that it's a piece that fits in a lot of different ways, and it's probably worth continuing to explore if Hinostroza is willing to take probably a little bit less than he probably thinks he's probably worth.
So we're a unique podcast. We're a Wings and a Blackhawks podcast. So it's kind of weird. It's a rivalry podcast, and the Wings and the Hawks are
right.
The Wings and the Hawks are really both in rebuilds right now. And because of the division realignment that we had this season, we got to see them play each other a lot more this season. We have, the past couple seasons. And so I think you kind of got to look at two clubs that have taken different rebuild strategies. The Wings had Zetterberg and Datsuk for forever, and eventually they aged out and they didn't replace those guys who started moving, like Tatar, like Nyquist from the team. And then you've got a team like Chicago this year who had a lot of people like, Taves, Stock were on injury. Seabrook was gone. You had so many guys leave. In terms of just watching the series, which team would you say maybe is at a better spot in their rebuild right now?
Yeah, it's tough. I don't like. I think Detroit's gone about it better. Like I think that I probably believe in that rebuild better, where you just tear it down and you get some high draft picks and you build up that way. The Blackhawks wasn't as easy because of Kane and Taves contracts and Keith, and like they had so many guys that they signed long term, and there's probably there is a lesson to learn from that. Like you shouldn't be handing out all these these no movement clauses and all these these deals to players to keep in their 30s. Like it's nice and all and good and in thoughts, and I know you want to reward players and like I'm sure they're going to sell jerseys forever, and financially it's probably good in some ways, but on ice product, like it just doesn't add up. Eventually guys wear down, and they're lucky that Kane's a bit of a freak, and Keats obviously a huge freak, and just the way that he can skate and play 25 plus minutes still, and his analytics aren't good, and I think the Blackhawks realize that too, that for them to be successful, Duncan Keith probably can't be playing as much as he does.
Yeah.
Like, and Taves, he had some rough years, but he's even bounced back offensively. Like they've I think they've gotten a little bit lucky, but at the same time, you've seen other guys wear down and break down. So like, there's probably somewhere in between that it probably wasn't worth those long-term deals and those sort of cap hits, because you did, as much as you won those 3 cups, like you also set yourself up for this, this demise, like this wasn't by chance, like when you have these many players in their 30s and this kind of, and the cap hits, like it creates this environment. So, I think I tend to think Detroit, like they're better prepared, and certainly you need the lottery balls to fall, right? Like if that doesn't happen, then it's all for naught a little bit. But it's if Detroit ends up with a top 3 pick this year, then I think it's all worth it. And I think those are the players that eventually, and the Blackhawks are proof of it. Like you just have to be bad enough for long enough, and you get Kane and Taves, and without the Blackhawks going through those struggles for a bit and losing as much as they did, they wouldn't have Kane and Taves. So you certainly don't want to be like the Oilers and pick the wrong players when you have those type of picks. But if you pick the right guys, then I think you find success pretty quickly again. So yeah, I tend to think Detroit has the better model. I mean, the Blackhawks have gone about it differently, and they did get lucky with the Doc pick, so maybe that works out. And obviously when you and they've drafted well enough in some other spots. I mean, DeBrincat's a top 10 pick if we do that draft again. And even now, Lucas Reichel, who they drafted last year, I think someone that can play in the NHL next season. So, some of that's, it works in your favor too. But I do think the complete tear down is more of a more effective way to get back going again.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so going off of what Jordan was saying, how, this is a rivalry podcast, and it's great to see us all competing against each other again, but both teams are a shell of what it used to be in terms of the rivalry. Which Wings players, because I'm the other Wings host, have really stood out to you during these, more matchups that we've had? And going off of that with the whole rebuild, when do you see Detroit becoming that threat again, like we used to be back when we were rivals?
Oh, you're really testing my my Detroit knowledge here. Like, yeah, I'm blanking here. I'm trying. It's so weird because those Blackhawks Red Wings games were so interesting back in the day, and it feels like it lacked. Like as much as they played this year, it was like, I don't know. It's just like it felt like it just, and I felt it feels like who's the defenseman that's I'm blanking on his name now.
Chronic?
Cider?
Yes, Cider. Yes.
The one in the SHL or the one that's up here this year?
Who's the one who was up this year?
Chronic.
Was he pretty good? Did he have a?
Oh, he was
on my fantasy team. He did all right for me.
Maybe that's. I'm sorry. My knowledge of other teams.
Cider's the one in the NHL. Cider's the one in the SHL who you get a new video every week that just murders people.
Maybe that's what. Like I definitely see a lot of it. Like there's enough Detroit in my Twitter timeline, and I think Max does. I think Max has done a great job. At the Athletic too, of just
definitely.
Like the vision has to be the future, and I think I've even learned from Max a little bit covering the Blackhawks the last couple of seasons, where, like when you have a team that's struggling, like no one really wants to talk about the present a whole lot. So, it helps when you're projecting. So, I'm not gonna give you an answer. You probably Detroit listeners are gonna just feel like this guy's an idiot. So I'm not sure that I can even go down that path too far.
Would you prefer if the NHL kind of kept the divisions as they are now, somewhat the way they are, like maybe disperse the Canadian teams through, but like keep the Wings and the Hawks and rebuild that rivalry again and things like that?
Yeah, no, I think so, right? Like if somehow you can get St. Louis and Detroit, like it's geographically, I know it doesn't really work out with time zones and some of those things, but Yeah, I mean, there's so many fans, like obviously the rivalry isn't what it once was, but there's so many fans that still cling to that. And Detroit sucks and Chicago sucks and all those things still exist. Like people love that stuff, and the fact that it is close, and I feel like there is going to be, they're on different trajectories, but they're both, sort of in that rebuilding stage. And, the fact they're both trying to strive to be good, and maybe within the next 2 or 3 years, they both get going again. Yeah, it would be fun, like the fact that it's so close and it does allow fans to get in each other's buildings. And, it's odd. I mean, it's the two closest teams, for what, a 3 hour drive or whatever it is. Otherwise it's 5 hours to St. Louis. Like it's odd that the team nearest the Blackhawks is in a different division. I don't. I think it would be great. I think there's been a lot of positives to weigh the blood. Like you would have loved to see other teams this year, and you definitely got sick of some of these matchups. Like but it's if these teams are rolling and things are good, like this rivalry would reignite again. Like it's I think there are a lot of reasons that would make sense, and I probably don't trust NHL to get it right, but it's it definitely I think it makes a lot of sense, at least to me, to have Detroit and Chicago in the same division.
It's done benefits for our show because we get our rivalry week.
It's a little bit harder when you're not.
Like every other week.
Now, I will say, even if the divisions sort of go back to normal, I think one thing that I think a lot of people really enjoyed this year was the series. The way that you sort of built in, 2 or 3 games in a row, whether it was, all in one spot or the back and forth. It sort of reminds me of the piece that Mark Lazarus and Taze put together a year or 2 back about restructuring the schedule. Do you think that, or are you hearing anything that maybe these series or even a altered version of the series might continue in the future when things go back a little bit to normal?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything specifically, but I mean, I think the NHL is hearing things, like I don't think they're completely oblivious to, fans that like this and how this, even players have liked this, like they like the idea of staying in a town and, getting to know a team. And, you probably won't play the same team 8 times again next season, but if you're playing 4 times, I mean, why not make it a 2-2 set? And it's also, one of the things in that Taves story with Lazarus was about the environment too, and saving the flights and all those different things. And I also think for the players, like it's a grind when you're constantly flying, and to be in one city for a few days, like there's a lot of benefit to their mental and physical health. And the fans get into it. I mean, that second game, there is usually a little bit more chippiness, and teams are more familiar with each other. So I'm hoping they follow that. I haven't heard anything specifically, and I guess we'll see what I think right now. The NHL is trying to figure out what next season looks like still. I mean, there's still hurdles of the playoffs with the Canadian teams, and where we'll be at with the vaccine in Canada next year, and whether we'll be wearing masks and all those different things about next season. But I think in the future that I would hope that they've heard a lot of people and from players, the fans that have really liked this format. So I hope they stick with it in some way.
As a Wings fan, y'all keep trying to get me to love Taves. I didn't know about this story. My love for him just keeps growing.
It's a really good story. I'll send it to you.
It's an awesome piece. I know we're running short on time here, Scott. So I kind of want to wrap it up with, we've seen a lot of. We were surprised by the Blackhawks this year. We really did not expect what we've seen this year, where they're actually competing for a playoff spot here in late April, I guess you'd want to consider it, since Nashville kind of nailed our coffin shut a little bit. But sell the average Blackhawks fan to watch the Blackhawks next season, to be devoted to the Hawks again, because I know a lot of people were kind of out of it this year, but they kind of got reeled in just because of they exceeded expectations. So if you want to sell the average Blackhawks fan,
on be your ticket rep. I don't know. They're interesting. I mean, they're young and they should take that next step. Whether that happens, I think Taves plays next season. So I think that's it'll be a fascinating element. I don't know. I've never been a Blackhawks fan, even growing up in Chicago, because I came into hockey late. So I've always been pretty objective about them. But I think they're intriguing. Like I think they're a team that could be on the rise. I also wouldn't be surprised if they weren't. Like this, at some point, this all needs to work. And I feel like they've been competitive this season without it always making sense. Like the numbers don't always add up and the metrics don't always add up. And not that you need that. I mean, you look at Toronto and some teams where, like you can be a great offensive team and get by or have great goaltending like some places, but I haven't seen enough of the Blackhawks looking like a team that's going to take that next step. But I mean, they have the pieces. I think I don't know. I feel like I'm talking myself in circles with it, whether it'll be good next season or not. But there are pieces there. I mean, I think they need to figure out the defenseman and, like re-signing Zadorov, and you brought Riley Stillman in the mix. So what does that mean for Zadorov? And you definitely need you need a top defenseman still. You need someone, when you add elite defenseman, I think it makes other guys, like when you traded Kempney or traded Ruda, like these guys aren't elite defensemen. So you put them with elite defensemen, they're nice, they I think they fit with other people. So I think if the Blackhawks had more elite defensemen, I mean, it's obviously not an easy get, but if they add someone that can play at a high level, I think the rest of the group is better, because I think Murphy's pretty good, and I think Zadorov with the right team is pretty, with the right pairings can be, a factor, and I think Boqvist will grow, and I think Kirby Dach's, I think Kirby Dach is really, he hasn't been with the level he was at last year in Edmonton when he came back, but for the fact they're able to get him some games and coming off his wrist injury, and I think he's still their future number one center. So I think there are a lot of pieces that could make sense, and even 20 forwards, a lot of those guys are young guys that could factor in, and Reichel, that first round pick last year, like they can be young and exciting again, and you would think a lot of these guys take steps. So on paper, I think they're competitive. We'll see whether that plays out that way, but I don't know. I guess the biggest thing is that the fact that any of us can be in the stadium next year, like why not go watch hockey and get back to some normalcy. And I think regardless how good or bad your team is that you follow next season, I think everyone's just gonna be excited to be able to hopefully get back to some kind of real life again.
Absolutely. I'm dying to be back at the UC. So
absolutely. The sort of the theme of this season for both of our teams was little victories when both of us, we figured both teams were going to be in the bottom 5 or bottom 10. And there've been a lot of little victories this year. You just made some great points about being excited to be back in there. There was a lot of hope and a lot of if this year did anything, I think for any Blackhawks fan, it was, this could be exciting again. So I think you're right about just looking to the future. I think there's a lot of cool things that in the next year or two, we'll see how they pan out.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I think it's all, and it's a great thing sometimes about when you do become an uncompetitive team, is that hope is always, like if you have some young pieces you can cling to, like I think for fans that it's, I actually enjoy writing about prospects, and I love, following that part of it. So it's cool that, they have all these young players and people are into that. Cause I think, the worst thing is that, if it's one thing to be a losing team and then not have any prospects, or, like there's no hope that fans cling to. So I think both these organizations, where that's the one, like you can point to ways that these teams can be successful again in the coming years, and we'll see how it plays out. But I think that's a good way to put it, that there's some hope for both organizations.
All right. Well, I think that's a good note to end on. Scott, thank you again for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much
coming on. Again, for anybody who's watching or listening, Scott writes for The Athletic Chicago. If you don't have a subscription to The Athletic, do yourself a favor, go get one. I think I've got a subscription for a year for, I think it was like $40 or $50, basically at the cost of like a Starbucks and a half.
And are they still running the special right now for like $1 or something like that?
No, I usually tell people just wait, and usually you can catch, like obviously it helps me when you're paying full price subscription, but if you wait long enough, you can usually find something decent deal. So
and you can share it with someone. My friend and I share one.
And then we always hope, obviously, that we get people in, and then they resubscribe, and that's how we actually.
That's what
probably usually. So, but usually you can find a cheap deal if you haven't. So, no, guys, I appreciate having me on. It's been a lot of fun. So,
yeah.
Hey, thank you so much, Scott.
Thank you, Scott.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thank you.
You too.
Have a good night. That was awesome.
Cool. That was Scott Powers, everybody.
Yes,
what an absolute treat.
Boys, I mean, a lot of information. Like we said last week, what we hinted at, a lot smarter than we are.
Oh my
God.
God.
A lot smarter than we are.
Unless it's Red Wings.
As I say, I feel great about that.
But no, seriously, if you haven't checked
Oh
out
my
The Athletic,
gosh.
do yourself a favor. Please check it out. They cover everything. They cover football, basketball, hockey, soccer, college sports. It's all over, and it's
It-
so affordable.
It's the best sports site that I subscribe to. I go there first for any relevant information or
Yeah.
like updates and whatnot. It's just a well laid out site. It's got a great user interface, frankly, for those of you like myself that get excited about that. Great quality writers, like probably some of my favorite writers that were at other organizations that are now at The Athletic. And they treat their people well. Like they take care of, they take care of the people. That goes a long way for me as well. It's just it's a great organization and great content, and it's worth the price.
Yeah, it 100% is.
They cover everything, unlike ESPN, where it's just really focused on basketball and football. It
Yeah,
covers everything.
I mean, he had probably one of my favorite articles in this past season with the Alex DeBrincat story about, there was a story that came out. It was what every NHL organization felt, or someone inside an NHL organization felt on like passing on Alex DeBrincat and like the hindsight. So it was kind of cool, like what they had on Alex DeBrincat and like why they let him slide down so far, why they passed on him. And like and they showed who they selected and where they're at now. So it was a great story written by Scott alongside with Corey Pronman. So yeah, again, a big thank you to Scott Powers. It was nice enough to take some time out of our day, and and yeah, away we go.
Yeah, that was a real big shot with a couple of schmucks like us. So I'll take it.
Absolutely.
So for anybody who's still watching, we're gonna go ahead and move on to our regular edition of the show. So there are only a couple pieces of news this week. We covered a lot of stuff last week with the Wings and the Hawks, so there isn't really much to cover this week, but there are a couple things to talk about. On the Wings front, Joe Veleno makes his NHL debut. David, you have been waiting for this for a minute.
I am so excited to hear you talk about this.
He hasn't scored, but he's looked good. Like he looked like he can transition very well. Yes, I mean he doesn't look phenomenal yet, but he didn't look out of place. Like he looked like he was fitting in well. They had him on the power play today against Tampa, and he was moving the puck well with it. I was hoping, not just him, but somebody would shoot. We had a 5-on-3 for a full 2 minutes, and I think we had maybe 1 or 2 shots. But to me, he looks like he's fitting in all right. I can't wait to see him continue to develop.
One thing that I really liked about him is also, like you said, he didn't look out of place. But the other thing that I liked about him is I don't really recall him making any like major mistakes when he was out playing. That's the other thing, is his decisions were not amazing, but they also weren't bad decisions. And also he made plays really quick. He didn't really hesitate to make decisions. And at the NHL level, you got to make decisions quick. And he's shown that he was doing that this week.
Yeah, he's a very smart player, like in his puck movement and like knowing where to put it. Like it takes a lot to put a guy that you just called up on the power play against Tampa Bay, one of the best teams in the league. So that's not something you would normally do, but I feel like they have confidence in his ability, which we saw.
The other piece of news I want to talk about, Thomas Greiss and Jonathan Bernier.
Maybe.
Good goaltending's wasted in Detroit right now, and it's so
Yeah, it is.
frustrating.
Oh, yeah, it is. Grace, baby. Like he has looked. They both have looked phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's just sad to look at. Like when I'm watching games or looking at clips of games, because I don't get all the games where I'm at in DC, and it will be like the little under the scoreboard shots on goal, and like the other team has like 1,000 shots to our 5.
It's a massacre.
And they have no goals, and I'm like, okay, cool. Just keep doing that, and maybe our forwards will do something for you.
I mean, I've said this before, but honestly, if the league didn't look at just purely wins and losses on the goalie column, I think Jonathan Bernier would be in the running for the Vezina, and that's crazy that that's on Detroit of all teams.
For sure.
I don't think that's unrealistic.
It's unfortunate because, like, yeah, they do look at, okay, they're winning. But you can be winning all you want, and you could have a player putting up massive numbers. I mean, look at the Detroit Lions. I forget what year that was, 2011, 12, where Stafford threw for 5,000 yards and a crap ton of touchdowns and wasn't even mentioned in any type of MVP candidacy because our team wasn't great.
Yeah.
And then the Hawks, the only piece of news that I have for you guys is that Adam Boqvist is out for the rest of the year. You hate to see it because he's a young player who you want to see develop, but you know what? At this point, there's I think it's like 3 or 4 games left in the season for you guys.
5.
Is there
Yeah,
5?
we
Okay.
played our last home game today. So
Yep. But I mean, yeah, it sucks, but I mean, it could have come at a lot worse time, I guess, is, the silver lining to it.
It could have. I think it was just a bummer that Boqvist really has, again, progress isn't linear. There's times where he's up, there's times that he's down. But I really think over the span of this year, we have seen more consistency, more offensive skill, and a little more comfortability all around with Boqvist. I think the big thing that this does highlight is that question of stamina and conditioning. I think that he's still getting knocked off the puck too much. And I think that I don't know if it's positioning, I don't know if it's awareness or if it's the conditioning in general, but if he can start to work a little bit more on keeping himself out of some of these situations where he's been hit a little harder or it's caught him in like awkward spots. It's just, I hate seeing any games lost, especially when it's on something that we already had some concerns about, which was his strength.
Yeah, and the latest report or update from Carlton was they don't think he needs surgery, which is kind of a promising. It's a big off season again for his development. I know it's kind of, we're just like recycling information. Same thing with Kirby Doc. It's like big for development. But
yeah,
that's the case where we're at with these top prospects. So, they're not really prospects anymore. But yeah, hopefully he's able to have somewhat of a normal off season. It's. Again, he showed signs of promise after a rough start to the season.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's kind of a bummer that he really doesn't get to finish out this year. But that's the story of the Blackhawks season, is injuries continue to
and
in
we have
hockey.
plenty of guys that can that need those minutes too. So you get Bodan or you get Mitchell, you get Regula up there. Like there's going to be people to fill the spots. If nothing else, but to reward them for their hard work at this point.
Oh, there is one more piece of news for the Hawks too. I mean, if you want to, Lori Lightfoot finally, the last team to open up in the U.S., the Chicago Blackhawks finally decided, hey, fans, we will welcome you in at 25% for the last 2 games of the season while we're out of the playoffs. So yeah, I mean,
I saw that wonderful press conference with her, Benny the Bull, and Tommy Hawk, and it was a historic and monumental day. And we got to see Benny the Hawk and Tommy Bull. They did a little phase, swapperoo situation, which you gotta love that. Gotta have some fun at the United Center between the two teams.
So yeah, I mean, if you go catch those last 2 games, there's really not much to be excited about at this point, but
it's exciting to be at a game.
Yeah.
Listen,
fans
the
are back.
excitement is in its own rope.
It's just like, I guess my big point was like, wow, what terrible timing. The nail was in our put in our coffin last week, and oh hey, you guys can come back now that the season's essentially over.
Yeah, I get that, Nick, but it's a little victory. We talk about.
It is.
Some normalcy. It's some normalcy.
It is.
If anything, the one thing that I will take from that as a positive is that they feel that we can open back up like that. And if you take, am I frustrated that we weren't able to go 2 games when it was in a playoff contention spot? Yeah. Am I also equally excited that means that maybe we're getting better on COVID cases and more people are getting vaccinated and like we feel comfortable opening up? Yeah. I can live with those 2 spaces of that annoyance and frustration. Yeah. And also the excitement and hope on the positives. But I feel you loud and clear. I'm like, hey, it's done. Come back.
Just call it a wrap. Just call it a wrap for this season. We'll start next. No, it is promising. I just can't wait to stop talking about that COVID word. It's gonna feel so refreshing where we don't have to. That's not even in our dictionary anymore.
Talking to like your kids in 10, 20 years and being like, hey, by the way, this happened.
But yeah, I mean, I guess we got to go on to our favorite segment.
The flashback and the flash forward.
So that
the flashback and the flash forward is our segment where we talk about the week that was and the week that's going to be for both the Chicago Blackhawks and the Detroit Red Wings. The Red Wings, we walked into last week knowing it was probably not going to be I'm trying to think of the correct. Sure, we'll go with pretty. That's a kinder word than I think I would use. It could have been a lot worse, but as the
Yup.
saying goes, Grice, baby.
Christ, baby. Dun, 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 dun.
Detroit played against who was it? They played against Tampa. No, they didn't play against Tampa. They played
Carolina.
against Carolina and Columbus.
And
So
then Tampa.
and then the Tampa two games. So Tampa even going to a shootout for that matter. And like I said, Grice, baby, because goaltending carried that game. I mean, it carried the whole week, but
And Verana's shootout goal was a thing of beauty.
Oh, yeah, the Forsberg. Whoo!
And his goal against Carolina, that turned backhand that he did.
Yeah, I mean, I know. I forgot which one of you was mentioning, like, hey, maybe we'll flip Verana like we just did with Matt. Like, why would you want to flip this guy right now? He's been unreal.
Yeah, I'm
never
very
felt
excited. I think that he's a good fit for your team. I think he's a better fit for you guys than he was for Washington, frankly.
I think he
He's
just
gonna
needed to
get
be
so
that,
much more
like,
points.
he needed to be that, like, top guy. Like, he
Yep.
needed to be the goal scorer to rely on, and he thrives under that.
Put him with his countryman Zadina and just watch him light up the
That's
goal.
gonna be a beauty of a line, honestly.
honestly, next season, I want to see Verana, Zadina, and Larkin playing on a line. Zadina plays a great two-way game. Larkin can be the puck facilitator, and Verana can be the guy who just puts the Jets on and just has like just crazy good hands and movement. I really think that could be a very good line next season if
Be
they give
fine
it a
with that.
try.
Put
I mean,
Fabry
that-
and Bertuzzi together, they'd
Yep.
be fun together.
Was just thinking that that frees up your top six a little bit more for more combinations, honestly.
And then they also have whoever was it?
Rasmussen.
If they have Rasmussen still, I can't remember if Filppula is signed through next year or not.
Yeah, I want to say it's one more year.
I think he was.
Oh, no, this is it. He signed 2 years last season.
He might come back. You never know.
Is Nemesnikov on a 1 year?
He's on a 2-year.
Oh, you got Nemesnikov.
So like, if Detroit stays healthy, their top six doesn't look that bad for next season. And can we expect Jacob Verana to keep up the pace of goals that he's been having this season? No, but
Yes.
you might get Bobby Ryan back, which provides some complimentary. There's just a lot of cool combinations that you guys can do next year.
Close your eyes for a second. Just picture this.
Don't say Sam
Larkin,
Gagne right now.
Zadina, Fabry, Bertuzzi, Bobby Ryan, and then Sam Gagne top line whenever we play in Chicago.
That's fair.
But really, that's not a bad top six. And Jacob Verana has been really good for the Wings since the Wings picked him up. And Mantha hasn't been bad in Washington.
Nope. My Caps friends thank me for him.
It's a trade where nobody loses.
And like that's the thing. Like so often we're trying to rush to say so and so lost the trade, so and so won the trade. Sometimes in trades there are no winners and losers. It's strictly you have this piece I need, I've got this piece you need. Let's make a trade happen, and it works out for both clubs. And I think maybe this Mantha Verana trade is that trade. It's that sort of a trade where there's no loser. But anyway, yeah, the week for the Wings. Goaltending carried this week for the Wings. They kept it from being just complete bloodbath. It was already a bloodbath, but as Grice was on the ice.
Your goalies did some serious damage control, and that was very, very impressive.
The Hawks, you guys played. Who was it? You guys played Tampa.
Tampa,
Florida, and then you guys play. Is it Florida tomorrow?
Carolina.
Carolina.
We got 3 straight against Carolina in Carolina.
Oi.
Yikes.
Cool.
Carolina, they're at the top of the standings now, aren't they?
Yeah, they sure are.
Yeah.
Were they the first team to secure a playoff spot?
They clinched before Tampa, yes.
I love that bunch of jerks so much. Honestly, it's hard not to root for them.
I mean, what were your guys' takeaways for the Hawks this week? And you guys actually put up a lot better games than Detroit did.
It was still rough. I mean, we've seen against Tampa, Lankinen struggled. You know, we and again, I know he had so much pressure on him this season for like kind of what he did at the beginning of the season. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of repeating myself from last week's episode, but he's a rookie. He's gonna have signs of struggle. It's against one of the best teams in the league, if not the best offensive team in the league. Yeah, not the best week for him. Subban, he had an all right week. He played. I think he played both games against Florida. Or no, Lincoln came back the second game. Subban took over the first game against Florida. So yeah, I mean, against better competition, it's kind of expected at this point where we're at.
I was gonna say I think that I really liked. It's one of the first times that I've seen Lankinen emotionally react. I can't remember if it was the second to last game. I think it was the first game we lost against Florida that he just whipped the water bottle at the back when they lost eventually. And usually he's so stoic and so like stone cold where he just sort of stares and you're like, that's a little terrifying. But I think we sort of need to see, I think he knows. I think you're right. He's a rookie. We asked a ton of him, and they also treated him like a workhorse this year as a rookie, which I don't think he's ever played that long in that many games. Because like even in Rockford, he was injured for a period of time last year. So he didn't play that, that sample size of games. This is, I think, even Scott mentioned, I think he's the guy going forward. This was a good year for him to experience these different types of adversity that we talked about earlier in the season, seeing how he would respond to. So yeah, against top teams, I will say we were never it never felt like we were fully out of it.
No,
we were able to come back. We were able to keep them pretty tight. There were some blowouts, but we scored a couple of goals when we didn't think we would. People rallied. We're not seeing them just roll over and die. And to me, at this point in the season, that's a victory.
Yeah, it's kind of like round and around we go. This is kind of where we were at the beginning of the season.
Yep.
We played Tampa, we battled them. All right, we'll take it.
Great.
Yeah, so I mean, again, we're seeing a lot of these new guys, the younger guys, kind of, I'm not like we've seen Kane in the midst of that run or that stretch where we were competing for the playoffs, like double, triple shifting, and we're starting to see some of these guys come in and take a workload off, which is needed for a guy like Kane, especially at this point in the season. It's a lost cause. Give him some rest.
Yeah.
You don't need to play him 30 minutes a night. Like it's pointless. Don't even throw him out there in those situations.
And it's the same with Keith too. Yeah. We have so many young defensemen. Let Keith relax on his minutes. Play Mitchell and Bodan and Kalynuk and even Stillman and see who can rise a little bit. I don't know. We don't need to rely on our veterans right now when there's nothing we're fighting for except for the future.
Yep.
Okay.
So, star of the week. Who's your guys' star of the week this week for Chicago?
I'm gonna go with Adam Gaudette.
All right.
He had 3 points in 3 games. Or 3 points in 2 games. My bad. He was a healthy scratch against Tampa. He came in against Florida, and he had a goal in the first game and 2 assists in the second game. So, kind of a guy we got for Matthew Highmore again. Just to flashback a little bit. He had more offensive potential than Highmore, so that's kind of why Stan Bowman pulled the trigger. Bigger body, and we see him kind of use it. He got in some dirty areas, got in some scoring chances, and he created some plays. So yeah, goal and 2 assists in 2 games. I'm gonna go with Gaudette.
That's an excellent choice. Love that. I am going to go with DeBrincat. I am. Okay. I'm going to go with DeBrincat. Yeah. At first I was kind of like, is there a star to be this week? But honestly, DeBrincat's been so involved. I feel like most of the Blackhawks goals or like big plays that they've had, I feel like he has been either a contributing factor in it or he's around the play. At this point in the season, he's one of the people that I'm going to be looking at saying, are you still active? Are you still engaged every play? Because it's easy to check out, especially when you're a little bit more of a veteran like he's at now. At this point in the process, I see him still fighting every game. And I don't know. I thought he did a really nice job this week. I was proud of him.
There you go.
David?
What about you guys?
On the wing side, our goaltending's been great, but I got to give some love to Grice baby. Thomas Grice. He shut out Tampa last night, like not a single goal, and there was plenty of times where they should have scored, and like he's had other good games this week too, and last week as well. But like he shut out Tampa Bay. That's
such a big deal.
Something you do. And then he stopped him in a shootout. So, I gotta go with him.
I mean, yeah, it's got to be Grice. I mean, who else do you pick? Shutting out Tampa Bay, putting on a great performance. And on top of that, it wasn't even just like Tampa Bay was not putting up quality chances. They put up plenty of quality chances. Rebound control was really good. Initial and double stops were great. Like, who else are you gonna pick this week?
There was a stop where they had pretty much like an open net, and he just kicks his leg out and just stops it. And I'm like, God. Beautiful.
Good goaltending is being wasted on the Detroit Red Wings.
That's for sure.
The flash forward this week, the Wings only have 2 games, and it's a doubleheader versus Columbus in Columbus. I wanna hope the Wings end this season on a high note.
You can win these games.
You can. They're below you in the standings.
Yeah, they are. They're below us. They suck. Fuck you, Ohio.
They've robbed. Well, yes, agreed. But also like they're kind of robbing you of those percentage odds.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
it's a little frustrating.
I don't even know like if the percentage odds are enough of a difference for me to not want to.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't matter. Detroit's going to get screwed either way.
You're right,
so.
exactly.
Don't you want the good karma at this point too? Like, hey, we're not completely tanking here.
Yeah.
We're trying.
Last year by a long shot. Like,
oh
no
my
one
God.
even close to taking the first seed from us, and they gave us the 4th pick. So.
Yeah, when was the last time the true number 1 seed got it, or number 1 worst team got it too?
Team then it wasn't Detroit.
Was it Edmonton?
I think it was Edmonton because what was it? No. Did New Jersey win when they got?
I think it was Jersey.
But either way,
Yeah.
it's been a while. I mean, the lottery, Lafreniere got it for the New York last year.
And they were a brink playoff team.
Yeah, they were a bubble team. They were playing in the play-in round. I don't know. I'm not expecting anything from Detroit this season from the soft season for the lottery system. We've been screwed every year, so I want to end on a high note this season.
Just win, baby.
Yep.
You know what?
So wait, what are you guys expecting though? It's different than wanting to win and then what you actually expect.
I think they should go 1-1. Realistically, I
think they
can't see them dropping both.
I think we go 1-1.
Hawksland, what's going on?
Oh, buddy, it's
pain.
Maybe
that make you feel better.
The thing is, Carolina has stuff to play for it too. Like,
yeah,
they want to go for that 1 seed in the West, or the new West. I don't know, whatever you want to consider it.
New West.
Because they're East, so it's different. All right, I guess we're the East team. Sorry, it's just COVID year, guys. Sorry.
Aren't we Central?
No,
I don't
but
know
like
what we are.
conference.
We're the Discover Central Division.
Yeah, but they got away with They've done away with conference. So yeah, the Central Division. It would be technically the Eastern Conference, but yeah. So the Central Division, Tampa Bay is 2 points back. Florida's 2 points back. So Carolina has a lot to play for. So I'm gonna say maybe we steal one from them. I don't see us taking both though.
I'm going 1-1-1.
Yeah.
We win 1, we lose 1, we lose 1 in overtime. Just because we've done that to Carolina this year. At this point, all I can go off of is comparables. And based on what we've done with them so far, I don't think that's an outrageous. We've been known as upsetters before. We caused the Blues a few years back to miss the playoffs when they were fighting for something. I don't know. I think that it might be fun for players if they know that they're, competing against a top team still, even if they're not competing for something, to just give it their all. I think there's guys playing for their next year spots, like a Kurashev or a Gaudette, guys that say, hey, my technical spot isn't a given. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. I say 1-1-1.
Okay.
So that's really it for the show. There's no fan mail this week because again, we had the interview with Scott Powers, which again, thank you to Scott for coming on the
Yes.
show. It's
Big,
always
big
fun to
thanks.
have somebody from the outside of the podcast on the show and
We-
bring a better take probably than we have.
We're forgetting about the biggest thing that happened this week, though.
Oh, my friend. I think
The
we're thinking the
Bears
same
have
thing.
a quarterback.
There's hope in Chicago. We have, not only do we have a quarterback, because I was going to say after the first day, great, we got a quarterback. We're still going to ruin him because we don't have an O-line. And what do we get?
We get a first-round talent. Devin Jenkins.
You
Boys,
guys don't
I'm
have
sorry.
Penny Sewell though.
Guys, I know this.
No, you're right.
I know this is a hockey
Khalil
podcast,
Mack's gonna
but
have a hard time with him.
Usually we start out the podcast with a
Yeah,
different sport
like,
other than hockey.
I have to talk about the Bears right now because like I know I'm always the Debbie Downer, but like, Bears are back. Oh nope, they're dead.
I'm so excited for this.
For
you
right
guys-
now, the Bears are back. I mean, I can't tell you Thursday night I was in the bar, had pool, and I think I cheers. I took like 10 shots and I cheers to here's to the next 15 years. About 10 times. So
Did you
I'm
guys-
still like I'm happy. I'm happy to be a Bears fan. And it's
Did you
weird.
guys see
It's weird.
the interview quotes from the two Lions first picks with Sewell and then with our defensive tackle? Because everyone was questioning why we drafted that defensive tackle, but they both fit the scheme that Dan Campbell has in biting people's kneecaps off. Because Penny Sewell was saying, like in an interview, he comes off the line every play with violent intentions, and I'm
Oh,
like,
dear.
okay.
That's
And
all
then the
right.
defensive tackle, his quote after being drafted was like, every play I'm looking to just fuck somebody up and just make them look like shit. And I'm like, okay,
That's
these guys
ki-
are gonna go.
That's kind of how Jenkins is too. He's got a mean streak in him. Now that said, I am thrilled for Andy Dalton's Bears.
All right, and that's where we stop.
QB1.
We'll go ahead and finish tonight's show on that note, though. For anybody who's still tuning in, thank you again for tuning into this edition of the Stick Blade Podcast. At the end of the day, this is a podcast. It's by fans. It's for fans. There's no corporate sponsors. There's nobody telling us the takes that we can and cannot have. It's literally just a bunch of guys getting around, having fun, talking about this hockey sport that we love and the teams that we love watching. And so we really want to share it with you guys. If you want to get in contact with the show, whether that's fan mail, critiques, ideas for the show, there are ample ways you guys can do that. You can get in touch with us via email, stickbladepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter. The Twitter handle's at stickbladepod. You can find us on SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/stickbladepodcast. We're on Apple Podcasts. We are on YouTube. You just type in the Stick Blade Podcast. You'll find us there. You can find us on Facebook. Just there are so many ways for you to get in contact with the show. If you want to get in contact with us, feel free to hit up any of those social channels because, again, we love interacting with you guys. We love having just fun things to talk about that we don't come up with ourselves.
Yep.
But yeah, that's going to be it for the show tonight. Again, thank you for tuning in. In the meantime, you all stay safe, take care of each other, and take care of yourselves. Let's go ahead and enjoy this last week or so that's going to be of the NHL season. And because the Wings and the Hawks are out this year, let's just enjoy some fun playoff hockey where neither of us really have a stake in the playoffs this season.
As long as the Caps don't win.
We'll see.
right.
But no, seriously, everybody, you guys take care of each other, take care of yourselves, and stay safe. You guys have a good evening.
Bear down.
Peace out.